Okay, there we go. So my first question is, what is Emory Edge and what does that mean to
So EDGE is an acronym, stands for Emory Graduate Diversifying Education. And it started about 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, can't count, um, under the leadership of our former Director of Graduate, Director of Recruitment and Diversity and Community in Laney Graduate School, um, and who's now gone as of this year. And it was an initiative started by him to address some of the issues and lacks in diversity and inclusion and community in the graduate school. Um, you know, graduate students tend to already be isolated by research. You go to grad school, and you don't really have community, anymore. You're told to do your work, your research, and study for courses and write your dissertation, which can leave no time for anything else. So it already has a burden on your work-life balance, time management, and ability to formulate relationships with people, just genuine friendships and connections with people. And when you add race and ethnicity on top of that, it adds a dimension to it, because research suggests that students of color at, on the undergraduate level already have certain things to deal with at a predominantly white institution, but on a graduate level it's intensified because you often don't have people who you're working with who look like you, and people working with you in your cohorts who look like you or come from a similar background or understand things the way you understand them, the world the way you understand them. And that adds on to the sometimes a burden for graduate students writ large, in terms of acclimating to the atmosphere of graduate school. So disproportionately, graduate students of color drop out due to depression, due to feeling emotionally withdrawn from their research and their program, from feeling like they're not supported in their graduate programs because of things like manifestations of racism, like microaggressions, right, or blatant things that happen in departments for different reasons. So graduate school tends to be very white. I'll just say that graduate school tends to be very white, especially at a place like Emory. And so EDGE is established to address some of those issues in terms of community on campus in the graduate school, and it also has the component of dealing with recruitment, and that's a really big part of it. And recruitment, so getting more minority students into graduate school, going to places like Tuskegee and Spelman and Morehouse, and the University of Puerto Rico, to recruit students intentionally to come to a place like Emory. People who never would have dreamed of going to a place like Emory for graduate school. EDGE is intentionally interested in targeting students from underrepresented backgrounds.
Okay, so since you have a lot of experience in going as a grad student, how would you say Emory had, what do you think, how good do you think they are at staying true to what their mission is to do? Because they claim on their website that they put diversity first, and would you say that they actually do that?
Who is the they? EDGE program or
yes.
Laney or Emory?
Yes, Laney on their page for diversity where it says EDGE.
I think since the EDGE program was developed, like I said, 4 years ago or so, it's definitely been something that the dean, all the way down, people have been serious about and engaged with. I think that the graduate school is intentional about reaching out to graduate students of color, to help with recruitment to help with building community and addressing issues within the community, and putting on workshops and discussions and programs which do more to address these issues of community and diversity in the graduate school. I think since the EDGE program has been around, the graduate school has kind of it's kind of pushed the graduate school to be more serious about these things and intentional about these things. I can't speak for the whole university. I don't know the impact directly that it's had on the university yet. It's still a very new program. I mean, 4 years is not a long time to see the effects. I've only been here for 4 years, and this program started when I got here. And I think you have to see a whole cycle of students go through it in order to really start to see the dividends. I also think that whatever the graduate school is a integral component of the university. I mean, what is the university without the graduate school? And if the graduate school is interested in this thing, then the university will follow suit in a certain kind of way. So a few years ago, I'm not sure if you did any research on this or heard about it. Some of the undergraduate black students held protests and raised a lot of awareness about diversity and recruitment and inclusion within the university as a whole, specifically about undergraduates, but it's extended to the university as a whole. And the university convened a big kind of workshop about addressing racism. This is after the heightened awareness in the news about Michael Brown and so forth, and trying to figure out ways of how the university could address these very public, pressing issues. So I think that what happened then, because I was a part of that, I saw the undergraduates taking charge, but the graduate school had already had some mechanisms in place with the EDGE program to address some of these things preemptively. And I think that the grad school in that way was a leader for the university in a way that perhaps the university in the larger space with the undergraduate, the college, and the professional schools could follow suit in looking at some of the stuff that EDGE has done to create a sense of a community for people of color in the graduate school.
Oh, that's good. So since you went to U of H, my sister actually goes there to school. And
You did all the research.
and Morehouse. So how would you say the communities compare between like Emory and more specifically U of H, since that's where you got your master's? And how would you compare their efforts to diversify their populations? Like,
Three completely different places. I mean, it's hard to compare. They're really three completely different places. Morehouse is an HBCU, all male HBCU, what diversity means in the context of Morehouse or Spelman, and I think you can look to Spelman's recent news about gender and how it defines woman. That becomes one of the bigger issues in terms of diversity. When you conceptualize what it means to be male or female, and how you identify it in a gendered sense. But then you get other ways of thinking about diversity and as ethnicity and nationality and that kind of thing. When I went to college, I didn't want to go to an HBCU. Actually, I wanted to go to Emory. I applied to Emory, got into Emory, and I wanted to go so bad I applied to Oxford too and got into that too. But I didn't get any money. But the reason is because I didn't want to go to what I thought another black school, like my high school was. I was mistaken in my idea of what blackness meant. It was a very narrow definition. I went to college and realized that my experience as a black male wasn't everyone else's experience. There are people from Africa, people from Europe who didn't go through the Middle Passage, that kind of thing, and didn't experience and have the cultural, historical experience of Jim Crow and that kind of stuff that in a lot of ways still persists. Not to say that, other people had it any better, it's just different experiences. So I experienced a very different and diverse array of what blackness meant, even in an HBCU context. And that's the great thing about an HBCU, because you get to see all of that and experience various shades of blackness. U of H, I mean, I was only there for 2 years. Community didn't exist for graduate students. That just wasn't a thing. It's a much bigger school than Emory is. It's, you know, right? It's I don't even know, several, 13, 15,000. It's a lot of students, right? I think it's the biggest school in Houston. And just like any big public school, it's almost impossible to kind of corral everything under that kind of umbrella. I'm sure some places do it, but and I just wasn't looking for that. I mean, my connection to University of Houston is very distant. I went there for class meetings and left. I didn't have a sense of ownership of the place and connection to the place like I did at Morehouse or I do at Emory. I was only there for 2 years, you know. It's a master's program. I was working, you know, in addition to going to school. So, I mean, I didn't have that kind of, but there weren't any mechanisms, like to the point. There wasn't an edge, you know. Even the graduate school wasn't a really cohesive entity because it's such a big institution, right? It's so, you know, you kind of get siloed into your division and then your program, department, and so forth. And then Emory, you know, is another kind of institution, you know, and so I've seen 3 different types, and I think a program like EDGE works at an institution like Emory and can work at a place, you know, its sister schools, Rice and Vanderbilt and so forth, Duke, Michigan, but a place like, not Michigan, but, you know, the big public institutions, it takes a different model. I don't have an answer for that because it's a different kind of institution, requires different needs, different students, more students, you know. EDGE is great because Emory's graduate school is just big enough to do programming that can encompass, you know, groups of people, and you can kind of know people face to face. You know, you kind of know who people are, and you can address the needs of the student body in a collective way, as opposed to, you know, the vagueness that could become at U of H. So.
Okay. So my next question is about, you recently won an award, the Karen, it was the Karen
Fulton?
Yeah, Karen Milton Foundation one.
Fulton.
And then your the fellowship as well. And you had several grants and internships. How important would you say?
How do you find out all of this?
I'm really good at Googling people. It sounds really weird,
well,
but
that's a good thing.
I'm
it's creepy, but it's a good thing. It's a good skill to have. You should go in the CIA or FBI or something. Don't get that on tape. All right.
So, how would you say these things are important or vital for underrepresented students going into grad school?
That's a good question as well. I think it shows that the school cares and notices, you know, that it has awards and opportunities available for students of color to show them. So as I mentioned before, you know, one reason why a lot of students of color drop out of grad school is because they don't feel supported. They don't feel like they've got community. No one cares, you know, not even about their research, but about them as a human being. And these things show me and have continued to show me that the graduate school and the university as a whole notices and they care, and not in a superficial way as a token black kid, but as a person with good ideas, with experience, who can offer something, bring something to the table. And not to say that there aren't other people who can do that, but it definitely makes me feel like this is a place where I can thrive, and any person of color can thrive if they, you know, are blessed enough to have certain opportunities, and then have these outlets to feel safe and supported by the graduate school. I mean, you should feel support in your department, but you should also feel supported by the graduate school itself. I think that's kind of my philosophy. And if for some reason you don't feel supported in your program, you should feel supported in your grad school. And both is a treat. I think that both the graduate school and the program can work together. And I think that's the other thing about EDGE. EDGE does well with mediating and being a kind of liaison between the program and the graduate school to make sure that the program is doing its job to support the students, right? Especially students of color. And I'm saying students of color, but diversity means a lot of things, right? You have students with disabilities, for instance. We had a program a few weeks ago about accessible classrooms and that kind of stuff. So I'm saying students of color, but this applies to various different groups that would come under the umbrella of diversity, which EDGE serves as well. But my work is primarily geared to students of color. That's what my heart is set on. And, so one thing I do is, I'm super big about recruitment and making sure that, students in undergraduate institutions like Morehouse and Spelman and Emory and in college and other places are exposed to graduate education. A lot of times when we're in college or before, no one ever tells you go get a PhD. Go get a job. If you're getting anything post-college, you must be a lawyer or a doctor. Like, no, I'm not that kind of doctor. And I think that exposing people to what graduate school education is and bringing them up so that when they get to the point when they're thinking about what's next, this becomes an option. And I can say, like, hey, Emory has a great program for you because we do support underrepresented minorities really, really well. And we go out of our way to do so. And through programming, through workshops, through symposia, through community building and graduate student groups like LGSA and BGSA, we do try to make it the best place and the best experience for diverse groups of students.
So, before I finish, do you see any problems in the way that they recruit students, or any problems with EDGE in general, or do you have any suggestions for them to improve their techniques?
So one thing about EDGE that I always criticize, and I don't blame them, I just criticize it in a positive way, is that it's very focused on the STEM disciplines, science, technology, education, math, and that's no fault of their own, because so what I just said a few minutes ago was that, a lot of students from underrepresented minority backgrounds, we call them URM, if you're told to go get a PhD, it's often going to be in STEM because there's a lot of money there. They'll say, I was in high school and they're like, oh, if you go to college, you can get this whatever and they'll pay for your school all the way up to a PhD if you want to be, in STEM. And I'm like, I don't want to be in STEM. And most of the money out there that's visible for graduate students is going to be from the NIH, from the NSF and NIMH and all these other acronyms I can't remember right now, because they actively give money for these kinds of things, because there's this big push in American education to get people in STEM. That's the thing, and therefore a lot of the EDGE programming tends to be around STEM, because that's just where a lot of money comes from. A lot of the money just it's there. Two, most of the students of color in particular at Emory in the graduate school are in the STEM disciplines. They're bigger, they have a lot more of them. And so when you think about just numbers, I don't have the numbers, but if you were to look at the numbers and demographics, or if you were to go to a meeting from the Black Grad Student Association or Latino Graduate Student Association, you might see more people in those meetings who happen to be in the sciences. That's just how it is. I've been to many of meetings and many of events, and I'm the only non-scientist in there.
It's like the same for undergrad though too.
Well, I mean, Emory. Now, see, Emory is a place, especially for undergrad. Like that's where you want to go if you want to do public health. That's where you want to go do any kind of science. So you can have a great resume for med school. You know, Emory is the place to go. When I applied to college, I applied to Emory because I want to be a doctor. I want to be a surgeon. Like, why not? Especially in the state, right? Best school in the state. With all that said, for people like me, it becomes really difficult to engage because many of the initiatives are going to be geared to the sciences. Many of the monies are going to be geared to people in the sciences and marketed to people in the sciences. And if you're not working in anything scientific and can't find a way to, finagle your research to make it fit whatever they want in terms of the grants and stuff, it's just not going to work. And in PhD programs, you're constantly being told to use your time wisely, such that everything is kind of geared to your dissertation, your research project. Well, what do you do in that case? My research project has something to do with art history and whatever, and it has nothing to do with science. I can't swing it that way. I'm not going to go to that event. I'm not going to go read. I'm not going to do anything for it. I'm not going to even know about EDGE. Why would I even put this? Not even in my head anymore, my purview. And I think that that's how EDGE started. They needed money, and they, one of the great places to find money is in the STEM disciplines in American higher education. That's how it is. But since then, partially because of me, really being in those spaces, going to those meetings, getting involved, is promoting non-science. There are a lot of people in Laney grad school, people of color, for instance, who are not in sciences too. We got people in philosophy, we got people in psychology, English, history, art. I mean, we're there. We need help too. And I think that not just my efforts, but there have been other people who've made big strides in helping to promote things that humanists would want to be involved with and social scientists would want to be involved with. The problem in that is there's not a lot of money there for that, as compared to the sciences. There's not these big grants from the National Science Foundation and the Institutes of Health to promote graduate student education in the humanities. The NEA, the National Endowment for the Arts, or the NEH, the National Endowment for Humanities, our current political situation doesn't want to give them any money, and they've taken lots of money away from them. No one ever is going to really say take money away from the sciences. They may, but it's not like the humanities. It's a totally different ballgame, different categories of taking money away. And therefore, these programs can't give money to fund, programs in graduate school, much less K through 12, in college. And so, I think the problem is not an EDGE problem; it's the way Americans think about education problem. So that, a little 12-year-old me isn't just told that when I go to college and if I want a PhD, I have to do it in the sciences. I need to be told or encouraged, hey, you can do a PhD in English. You can be a professor of history, philosophy if you want, because we need representation in those fields. And I think EDGE is slowly doing things to address that, but I think it's such a big problem within the culture. I think we need to fundamentally shift the way we think about education. But I will say, we go out and recruit, and they actively try to get people like me, and there's a couple of others who have the fellowships and so forth in religion and political science and so forth, philosophy, who go out to recruit people, and they see us and they're like, oh, you are doing a PhD in that? Mind blown thing. And I think that's a good step in doing that, because what they see is like someone who looks like them, who is doing this thing that's not what everyone else tells them to do. and it opens up a whole new world for that prospective student. One day they apply to school and say, I think I want to go to grad school. I remember that girl that, was at Emory, and she was doing, a PhD in philosophy. I liked her. She looked like me, which is a big thing. We don't talk about that enough. Having some representation matters. Having someone who looks like you in the classroom as a professor matters, And so it's like it's the gift that keeps on giving. And I think EDGE, in supporting students at Emory, pushes out more professors and PhDs of color and from diverse backgrounds in general, but particularly of color, and recruits, it's a cycle, and recruits more people. And I think if that continues to do, it will grow. I think it's a step, and I think it's a step in changing this larger cultural problem we have. Well, I say it's the cultural problem. It's not a problem. It's good. I think people should continue to do STEM disciplines. It's a great thing.
They just shouldn't ignore everything else.
Right. What's the world with a bunch of great scientists and mathematicians, without people who understand how to put them together and make sense out of them, and make sense of who we are as human beings. I know what a cell is, but do I know, how the cell, how the body works, and how differences in identity work, and that kind of thing. Those are the questions you hear about in the news right now. Science can only answer a piece of that. Math can only answer a piece of that. The other piece, I think, is where the humanities and the social sciences come in. And I think EDGE is, like I said, just making strides to address parts of that through recruitment, through supporting students who are here, so that we go out into the world and, hopefully create mini-me's.
Okay, last question. Do you have any advice for students who are wanting to pursue a graduate degree and who want to go to a diverse school? What should they be thinking about or looking at when they're looking for schools?
I do this talk all the time. We can talk an hour on that. So I would say it's never too early to start thinking about it and looking at where you want to go. I mean, I don't care if you're 10 years old. Dream big. What do you want to do when you grow up? Always, that's a good question to think about at different stages of life. What do I want to be when I grow up? And it's okay to change, what you want to do when you were 18 doesn't have to be what you want to do when you're 21, or 22 or 30. Sometimes I find myself going back to, when I was 5-10 years old. I'm like, what did I want to do back then? Because that's when life was pure. I didn't have the weight of the world and adulting on me. And not to say that's what I'm doing, because I'm not. I wanted to be a marine biologist. I'm not doing that right now. But, I mean, really, really making sure that you never forget to dream big and have big goals and figure out ways of achieving those big goals and dreams. That's vital. We need people who continue to dream and hope. Obama did. Wrote a book on it. Practically speaking, it's never too early to start thinking like where you want to go do a PhD. And well, back up. It's never too early to start thinking about what's the next step. So even as a freshman in college, you should be thinking about what's next, because you can't start thinking about it senior year. There are too many people who wait until senior year and is like, oh, I'm about to graduate. What am I gonna do now? No. It's too late. You're gonna be working in Starbucks. Like, don't do that. Unless you're rich, then different doors open for you. But start thinking early. Even if it's just like exploring. When I was a freshman in college, I was a psychology major, and a summer afterward, I spent a couple of weeks volunteering at a psychologist's office, because that's what I wanted to do. It was free, just hanging out, sitting in on some of the sessions. And I started to fall asleep in one session. And I realized, this is not what I want to do. I don't want to do this. I cannot sit here and do this for the rest of my life. Not to say that's the only thing involved in that job. I'm like, this is not what I want to do. So figuring out what you don't want to do is just as important often as figuring out what you do want to do. So taking opportunities when they come around and saying like, oh, that's a cool internship. It doesn't pay anything, but maybe I can do it for a little while and whatever. Especially if it's back home. Um, yeah, go volunteer somewhere, and you make those connections and those networks. Um, but you often discover like, oh, this is what I want to do, or this is not what I want to do, and that's valuable information to do even as a freshman. As a sophomore, this is all assuming you have it great. Your academics are on point too, right? This is don't go chasing waterfalls when you can't handle the river. Tweet that. And sophomore year, really start thinking about getting serious about those things. Like, okay, all right, I've tried this, I've explored that. I don't like that. I kind of like this. Get deeper in something. Figure out if you go start volunteering at a place. And really figure out what moves you, what drives you to do things. Learn a new language, go study abroad. Try new things. Get out there. Don't just be a good student. Being a good student is not enough. It's important, but it's not enough. And if you're set on a PhD, I would say get on board sophomore year and start figuring out what that's about. Meaning. Figuring out what's required of you, become a better writer, do what you need to do to be a better writer as soon as possible, meaning send your writing out to people and professors, and if there's a contest, send it there, and get friends. Become a better writer, because you're going to need that, and the sooner the better. Get feedback on essays for class, and just become a better, write for fun, just be a better writer and reader. Junior year, you need to be on the ball junior year, because junior year you got to take your GRE. Don't wait to senior year to do that. Do it junior year, because you might want to take it again if your score is not good enough or to where you want it to be.
Is that like the SAT?
It's like the SAT. The general record exam is like the SAT on some kind of drug. And you'll find that out later. So the requirements, so GRE is a usual requirement for applications, a statement of purpose, recommendations, transcript, and often, especially in humanities, they want a writing sample, sample of your writing to show that you can do graduate level research. So you might want to work with a professor starting junior year or earlier to say, hey, I'm interested in doing a PhD. How can I get involved in research? So talk to professors, build up those relationships, because those professors will then write you recommendation letters. And the more information they can say about you, the better that relationship is. The more, the better the recommendation will be. It's not like, oh, they're in my class 3 years ago. They were good, I guess. I don't really remember. They made good grades. That's fine. But that's not going to measure up to the recommendation letter that says, I've known this person for 2 years, I've worked with them, I've seen their research, I've seen their capacity, night and day. Research is cool. Junior year, where do you want to go? Do you want to go to Alaska? Okay, go to the University of Alaska. Do it. I don't know why you would, but do it. Maybe there's something you might want to study there, especially in the sciences, right? If you want geological kind of thing, or if you politics and I don't know, whatever, history. There's reasons for wanting to go to Alaska. There's reasons for wanting to go to Idaho. Not everybody has to go to Harvard. Not everybody has to go to. Not everybody has to go to. Emory. That's why I tell people when I do recruitment, you don't have to go to Emory to grad school. Go somewhere where you feel supported. You have what you need. And if that's not Emory, that's okay. Because Emory is not for everybody. Sorry. So make that list of where you might want to go. And you can do that by going through like a relationship. What will you not stand for? If you don't want to deal with snow, don't apply to University of Michigan. If that's a non-negotiable, if you don't want to go to a very big school like University of Houston or University of Texas, A&M, whatever. If you don't want to do that, just write that off. You know, if you want to go to a smaller place, do that. You know, and there's things you can look for in a school, but I would say between sophomore junior year, just start thinking about where you want to be, and what kind of stuff you want to get out of it in general. And you can just whittle away at that as time goes on. So senior year, you start prepping you check your GRE again, and any other, your writing sample, all that other kind of stuff, recommendations you can kind of get out of the way senior year, because you'll also be trying to graduate, right? You don't want to put too much on yourself at that point. So, yeah, start early, plan early, talk to professors, build relationships, and enjoy college. Do not spend all college doing this. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy the place you're in as much as possible. Build friendships, real relationships, because those are the people who you will carry with you throughout the rest of life, even if it's 1 or 2 people. That's probably the most important advice.
Oh, well, that's great. I have 2 friends, so hopefully they stay with me forever.
Well, they might. I'm going on a trip this weekend to Mexico City. With 2 of my friends I met in college. One of them I've known since senior year of high school. He went to college with me. So, yeah. It works, it happens. They will be your bedrock, even when you don't have an EDGE program to deal with, to help you.
It's Tigger!
That was great. You have really good answers to everything. I know you're like...
I'm a politician by at heart now.